In 1986, a 20-year-old man named Christopher Knight got into his car, drove to rural Maine, and walked into the woods. He had no idea how long he was going to stay. But what nobody could have imagined is that he didn't come back to civilization for 27 years. And somehow what he did in those 27 years is even harder to believe. See, Christopher didn't build some giant cabin in the middle of nowhere. In fact, he wasn't even that far from civilization. He created a tiny hidden camp in the woods near North Pond, surrounded by rocks and thick trees, close enough to nearby cabins that there were people less than a mile away. And yet somehow nobody knew that he was there. And that creates the pretty obvious question: how does someone survive alone in the Maine wilderness for 27 years? Because if you've ever been to Maine, their winters get really cold. And that's just one of the many mysteries to the story. He slept in a small tent hidden beneath layers of tarps. And over time, he managed to bring a bed frame, mattress, sleeping bags, and other supplies to his campsite. So at least he had some form of shelter. But for nearly 3 decades, he never slept inside a house or a cabin. He was always outdoors. And surviving the brutal Maine winters without hardly any supplies posed another question. Where was he getting everything that he needed? And this is where the story starts to get strange. He survived by basically sneaking into nearby cabins at night, because mind you, he was less than a mile away from civilization. And he would steal food, clothing, propane, books, basically whatever he needed. Authorities eventually estimated that over those 27 years, he probably committed over 1,000 burglaries. And people around North Pond eventually began to realize that something weird was going on. Food would disappear, supplies would vanish. For years, this mysterious person became almost like a ghost in their area. But nobody could figure out who he was. And this is the craziest part. Christopher kept doing this through the Maine winters without building a fire, because he was afraid he was going to get caught. Which, once again, Maine winters, I believe, can get below zero frequently. That is literally insane. I don't know how he survived 27 years. And another thing that's hard to wrap your head around. Christopher said that in the nearly 3 decades he was out there, he basically had zero human interaction at all. He remembers encountering some hiker sometime in like the 1990s. He said one word to him: hi. And according to him, that was the only conversation he had with anyone in 27 years. But eventually, somebody figured out how to catch him. Because in 2013, after another break-in, a game warden named Terry Hughes installed a hidden motor detector inside a camp Christopher had been stealing from. And Hughes was determined to catch him. He practiced racing from his house to the camp so that if the alarm ever did went off, he could get there before the thief disappeared back into the woods. And of course, one night, the alarm went off. Hughes rushed over, and after almost 27 years of living practically invisible, Christopher Knight walked out of the building carrying stolen goods and supplies. And this time there was someone waiting for him, and he was arrested. And that night, after nearly 10,000 days sleeping in a tent hidden in the Maine wilderness, Christopher Knight slept inside a building for the first time in 27 years. But to me, the craziest part of the story isn't that he survived. It isn't even that he avoided being caught for 27 years. It's why he did it. Because this was not an elaborate plan. Christopher himself even struggled to explain why he did it in the first place. But honestly, Christopher seemed to just feel more comfortable alone. And I think that's what makes this story so fascinating. Because most of us from time to time when life gets stressful wonder what it would be like to escape. And Christopher Knight actually did that. And 27 years later, the world eventually found him again.